चैन से सोना है तो जाग जाइए. Now this phrase is a bit cliche, but if you want to sleep well before your exam, if you want to be very satisfied before your exam, you should follow this session. Not just this session, इस सेशन के साथ साथ आने वाले जितने भी सीरीज के अंदर क्लासेस हैं उनको तहे दिल से फॉलो जरूर कीजिएगा, बिकॉज वी एट श्री राम IAS आर ब्रिंगिंग टू यू द इम्पॉर्टेंट करंट अफेयर्स फ्रॉम द लास्ट 1.5 ईयर्स. एंड पिछले 1.5 साल से इंपॉर्टेंट जो करंट अफेयर्स रहे हैं उनको हम फॉलो करेंगे. वी वुड अंडरस्टैंड एज टू हाउ एवरीथिंग इज गोइंग टू प्ले आउट. वी वुड टॉक अबाउट अ लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स. इन दिस सेशन पर्टिकुलरली आई वुड टॉक अबाउट पैसा, ये पैसा, हाँ पैसा. नाउ वी वुड बी टॉकिंग अबाउट मनी, नॉट जस्ट मनी, वी वुड बी टॉकिंग अबाउट इंडियन रुपी. As far as Indian rupee is concerned, Indian rupee is a very lucrative thing. Everybody wants money, everybody wants a job associated with that money, है ना. सब कोई पैसा चाहते हैं, चाहे ऐसा चाहिए चाहे वैसा चाहिए, सबको पैसा चाहिए, right? The first topic that I've brought to you is a very near and dear topic for UPSC as well. UPSC Civil Services Examination ने पिछले कुछ सालों के अंदर 2 से 3 बार इस पर्टिकुलर फील्ड, इस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक्स में, इन पर्टिकुलर सीरीज ऑफ टॉपिक्स में से दे हैव आस्क्ड क्वेश्चंस. And if they have asked questions, that means it shows a certain level of affinity towards these topics. Now, the topic that we want to discuss is rupee, because very recently it had gained somewhere around 8 paisa and came close to somewhere around 82 rupees 50 paisa as against US dollar. A very fair and simple game, a very fair and simple situation where particularly if you consider Indian rupee vis-a-vis dollars, rupees and dollars, the exchange rate और दी एक्सचेंज रेट रिजीम्स, इन सब चीज़ों की चर्चा करने वाले हैं इस क्लास के अंदर. स्टे ट्यून्ड टिल द एंड बिकॉज यू आर गोइंग टू लर्न वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट्स, समथिंग दैट माइट कम डायरेक्टली इन योर एग्जाम्स. सो आई हैव ब्रॉट टू यू सर्टेन थिंग्स जो कि सीधे सीधे आपके एग्जाम के लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. सबसे पहली चीज, रिसेंटली वी सॉ दैट 8 रुपी गेन हैपेंड फॉर इंडियन रुपी विज़-अ-वी US डॉलर. इस चीज को पहले समझ लेते हैं. For all those uninitiated ones, for those individuals who find economy a bit difficult, let's ease things out for them. अलग-अलग देश, different nations, they evolved differently, their societies evolved differently, their social structures evolved differently, and hence their political structures evolved differently, so on and so forth. That led to the aspect where their economies evolved differently, and that is why they have different currencies. Now those different currencies, it would have been a wonderful world if you had a 1 rupee and you could convert it into $1. बहुत आसान जिंदगी होती if you had 1 rupee and you could convert it into 1 euro or say 1 renminbi. सारी की सारी करेंसीज इक्वेटेड होती. लेकिन सोचिए कि सोसाइटी एंड सोसाइटी के स्ट्रक्चर्स और उसकी कॉम्प्लेक्सिटीज डिफरेंट होने की वजह से यहां इन इंडिया the inflation in onions, for example, it worries you a lot. It might not worry an American that much. It might not worry a Chinese individual that much. For some, semiconductor chips getting costlier would have an impact. For some, wheat getting costlier or getting destroyed, for example, very recently where rains in Punjab destroyed a lot of grain. किसी के लिए वो मुश्किल हो सकती है, किसी के लिए ये मुश्किल हो सकता है. एंड दैट इज वाई, बिकॉज डिफरेंट इकोनॉमीज इवॉल्व्ड डिफरेंटली, they have different inflation rates. Now because they have inflation rates, there is a difference in the inflation rates. Imagine what if, for example, there was something which was very cheap in India and it was costly in America. अगर एक्सचेंज रेट रिजीम्स ना होती एंड इन्फ्लेशंस डिफरेंटली काम करती, फॉर एग्जाम्पल यू कुड परचेज समथिंग फ्रॉम इंडिया एंड एक्सपोर्ट इट टू द यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स और उसको महंगे दाम पर भेज देते एंड यू कुड हैव अर्न्ड मनी, राइट? नाउ यू कैन नॉट डू दैट. लगता है इसमें पैसा है, इसमें धन है, लेकिन you cannot do that. Why and how? Because your exchange rates, they are adjusted vis-a-vis the inflation differentials. दोनों देशों के बीच में जो इन्फ्लेशन का डिफरेंस है, उस डिफरेंस को ध्यान में रखते हुए एक्सचेंज रेट को एडजस्ट कर दिया जाता है, सो दैट नोबडी, माइंड यू, नोबडी टेक्स बेनिफिट ऑफ आर्बिट्रेज. Arbitrage. Some people call it arbitrage, some people call it arbitrage. मुंह से पहली बार में arbitrage निकला तो let it be. Now, so ये basic reason है that you need to understand where you have different countries, उनकी currencies, their exchange rates, they are influenced by inflation. Now, what is the effect of inflation on exchange rates or on currencies? For example, let's just say that you had $1, right? You had $1 and that dollar amounted to 50 rupees. $1 था आपके हाथ में, $1 50 रुपए के बराबर. सीधी सीधी बात, $1 50 रुपए के बराबर. इमेजिन इंडिया के अंदर इन्फ्लेशन हो गई. अब आज भी आप $1 से 1 किलो प्याज खरीद सकते हैं. यू कैन परचेज 1 kg अनियंस. प्याज रुलाएगा, मैं आपको बता रहा हूं. यू कुड परचेज 1 kg अनियंस एज फार एज यूएस इज कंसर्न फॉर $1. Imagine you had 50 rupees, you could have purchased 1 kg onion in India, presumably. But if inflation happens, particularly say for example food inflation happens, this 50 rupees per kg happens to become 80 rupees per kg. अब 1 किलो प्याज 80 रुपए का मिल रहा है. Now for this 80 rupees, imagine this situation that this 80 rupees is going to get you the same amount of onions as you would get in $1. Understand this very deeply. आपके रुपए की वैल्यू, यूनिट रुपए की वैल्यू vis-a-vis डॉलर गिरनी शुरू हो गई. That means when inflation happens in one country more than the other country, and that is why I used the term inflation, a very important term, inflation differential. बहुत ज्यादा लंबी चौड़ी कहानी नहीं है इसके पीछे, just a simple fact, the difference between the inflation rates or the average rates of inflation. जिस भी rate of inflation को या inflation index को दोनों देश use करते हैं, whichever index. For example, for India we use CPI overall, right? That is what is used by RBI for calculating the inflation and inflation targeting as well. Now, so if you consider that 80 rupees, when it comes to 80 rupees, 1 kg onion, the value of Indian rupee goes down vis-a-vis dollars. This is $1. Okay. That means whenever there is a positive inflation differential for one country, अगर इस देश के अंदर, भारत के अंदर, for India, the inflation rate is more than that of US, the Indian currency would become weak compared to the dollar. There is one more reason associated to it. ये चीज समझ में आ गई तो यूपीएससी का कोई भी क्वेश्चन in prelims particularly and even in mains and in the interviews, you will not fail to answer. This is the basic concept. Mind you, mark my words, this will help you in your prelims. Simple thing. You want to purchase 1 kg onion. Economy is a humanities subject. It is a subject of humanities. ये ह्यूमन बिहेवियर का सब्जेक्ट है. तो ह्यूमन बिहेवियर के अंदर इंसान को चीजों की जरूरत पड़ती है. मुझे नवरात्रे खत्म हो गए तो मुझे प्याज की जरूरत पड़ी. आई वॉन्ट टू परचेज अनियंस. आई वेंट टू द मार्केट एंड आई ब्रॉट आउट a 50 rupee note. That was not enough. I had to bring out more currency to purchase 1 kg onions per unit, of products or goods, for example. That means that whenever any individual is going to spend, he or she, they are going to spend more. That is what inflation is. You spend a lot more than you already were, है ना? If you spend more, it leads to the rise in the existence of currency in the market. आप मार्केट के अंदर मनी फ्लो को बढ़ा देते हैं indirectly, and that happens at different levels. For example, you have been accustomed, आप लोगों को ये आदत हो चुकी है, you have been accustomed to look at economies internally, because when you talk about fiscal policy, you talk about monetary policy, you talk about GDP, everything you see within this room or within this domestic territory, for example. But there is something that is also happening right at the doors. Exchange rate हो रहा है वहां पर. There is a separate market there. There is a small, conjuncture where there is a transition of currencies. और उस मार्केट जोन के अंदर, जिस तरीके से मैंने अभी आपको समझाया, अगर करेंसी की सप्लाई बढ़ जाएगी, आपके रुपीस की सप्लाई बढ़ जाएगी फॉर वेरियस थिंग्स, देयर विल बी अ वीकेंड रुपी. सप्लाई राइजेस, प्राइसेस फॉल. अब प्राइसेस फॉल होंगी तो किसके एवज में होंगी? बिकॉज इट इज एन एक्सचेंज रेट रिजीम, सो यू विल हैव टू कंपेयर इट विद समथिंग. So you compare it with dollars, but when you compare it with dollars, your Indian rupee weakens. And that is why when you have inflation in India, you have inflation in India more than the United States, you see a weakening rupee. That reminds me of one point in time where, if you remember, Nirmala Sitharaman ji, our Honorable Finance Minister, she had said that it is not rupee depreciating, it is dollar appreciating. इस phrase को याद रखना. Individuals who had no clue about economics, they actually used this as a political instrument. उन्होंने इसके ऊपर बहुत सारी कहानी बनाई. But we as UPSC aspirants, we need to make sure that we separate the chaff from the grain. We understand the nitty-gritties of the concept. So we would understand why she said so, and we would understand it so to the extent that we can answer questions in your prelims as well. ऐसा ही एक सवाल previous year questions में आ चुका है. There was one question way back in 2021, ज़्यादा दूर की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ. The effect of devaluation of currency is that it necessarily, number one, improves the competitiveness of domestic exports in the foreign markets. हमारे एक्सपोर्ट्स को फॉरेन मार्केट्स में कंपेटिटिव बना देता है. इंक्रीजेस द फॉरेन वैल्यू ऑफ डोमेस्टिक करेंसी. Number two. Number three, improves the trade balance. I would not show you the options because those options are for those individuals जिनके concepts weak हैं. उनको अकड़ बकड़ करने की जरूरत है या फिर वो one only या two only में से rule out करने की कोशिश करेंगे. बट अपने concepts clear हैं भाई. अभी थोड़ी देर पहले ही मैंने आपको एक चीज एक्सप्लेन की है, उसी के बेसिस पर you can answer this question. Let's understand this. The first statement says improve the competitiveness of domestic exports. This is a previous year question. This is a question from 2021, not way back, but only 2 years back. 2021 में सवाल आया, क्या पूछ रहे हैं? Effect of devaluation of currency. यही सब चीजें अभी डिस्कस कर रहे थे. Let's understand the first statement. Improves the competitiveness of the domestic exports in the foreign markets. Now, if you were to export onions, or if you wanted to export any goods, अगर आपकी करेंसी की वैल्यू गिर जाती है, देन यू सेल द प्रोडक्ट्स एट द सेम प्राइस इन द फॉरेन मार्केट, लेकिन उस फॉरेन मार्केट के $1 के प्रति आपको अब 50 की बजाय 80 रुपए मिल रहे हैं. एक्सपोर्टर्स को ज्यादा बेनिफिट हो रहा है, इंपोर्टर्स को नुकसान होगा, बिकॉज इंपोर्टर्स विल हैव टू पे मोर, दे विल हैव टू गैदर मोर रुपीज सो दैट दे कैन गेट वन सिंगल यूनिट ऑफ डॉलर and import goods from the US market or say international market. And that is why whenever there is devaluation of currency, it is basically a boon for the exporters. First statement is correct. Second statement, increases the foreign value of domestic currency. नहीं भाई, डिक्रीजेस, डीवैल्यूएशन हुआ है भाई, फॉरेन वैल्यू ऑफ डोमेस्टिक करेंसी गिर जाएगी. डिमांड विल ऑल्सो गो डाउन ऑनेस्टली. व्हाई? बिकॉज पीपल विल हैव लेस फेथ इन द डोमेस्टिक करेंसी. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, ट्रेड बैलेंस कैसे इंप्रूव होगा? हाउ वुड यू इंप्रूव द ट्रेड बैलेंस? It will have a very meager impact on trade balance. Why? Because people would not want to come into India. For example, when you have currency devaluations, China did that, and it is not a very good process of doing things. Moving further, the answer to this question, if I were to give you, the answer to this question is one only. Sorry, one only. All right. Now, further, there was another question in 2019. We would solve this as well. Which of the following is not, ये ना not ना छुपा होता है, इसको हाईलाइट करके ऐसे एरो मार्क कर दीजिएगा in your prelims paper. Make sure that this silly mistake does not happen at your end. इस चीज का ख्याल रखना. Now, not the most likely measure the government or the RBI takes to stop the slide of Indian rupee, because Indian rupee was sliding. 2019 के अंदर there was this question. The first statement says that क्या नहीं करेगी सरकार, what the government will not do or the RBI will not do, curb the imports of non-essential goods. उस पे थोड़ा सा maybe some form of tariff और non-tariff barriers लगाने की कोशिश करेगी, उसको curb करेगी. करना चाहिए भाई, because imports take away your foreign exchange. You have to use your domestic currency. वो domestic currency market में जाएगी, ज्यादा supply बढ़ेगी, आप दूसरी currency, दूसरे देश की currency की demand बढ़ाएंगे, करना पड़ेगा अपने को इंपोर्ट कम, इंपोर्ट तो कम करना पड़ेगा. सो दिस इज नॉट द आंसर. हालांकि दिस इज द राइट मेजर, बट इट इज नॉट द आंसर बिकॉज नॉट पूछा हुआ है. एनकरेजिंग इंडियन बोरोवर्स टू इशू रुपी डिनोमिनेटेड मसाला बॉन्ड्स. Rupee denominated masala bonds offer you investment opportunities into Indian companies in rupees itself. So this helps you surpass the exchange rate regimes and exchange rate fluctuations. तो आप डायरेक्टली रुपी में इन्वेस्टमेंट कर सकते हैं मसाला बॉन्ड्स के जरिए. दिस इज अ वंडरफुल वे. ये तो इनफैक्ट करना चाहिए. रुपी जो है आपका वापस इंडियन मार्केट के अंदर रुपी इस तरीके से आएगा कि फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट्स डॉलर्स छोड़ के रुपी में डिमांड बढ़ाएंगे, रुपी की डिमांड बढ़ जाएगी इसकी वजह से. तो देयर विल बी एन इंक्रीज इन द डिमांड ऑफ रुपी. easing the conditions relating to external commercial borrowings. People tending to borrow from foreign countries. Private sector trying to borrow from the foreign countries. External commercial borrowings should be increased, definitely should be increased. It would increase the supply of dollar in Indian economy. At the doors जहां पर आपका exchange rate हो रहा है ना, वहां पर दरवाजे पे जहां पर डॉलर्स रुपीज में कन्वर्ट हो रहे हैं, तो वहां पर डॉलर की सप्लाई बढ़ जाएगी because of this external commercial borrowings. Beyond that, following an expansionary monetary policy. Now, if you follow an expansionary monetary policy, what would happen? You would increase the supply of rupee in the market. It would lead to inflation. It will not help the cause because it will lead to Indian rupee sliding further. ये चीज नहीं करनी चाहिए और यही तो आंसर है. यही तो पूछ रहा है कि क्या नहीं करना था. And that is how you can solve any question, any technical question in economics as well, if you follow things in concepts. Now, as we have understood as to how inflation affects the exchange rates, I have talked about arbitrage. What is arbitrage or arbitrage? Arbitrage is basically that process where one individual, if inflation was not impacting the exchange rates, would use the exchange rate regime or the difference in the inflation to gather money, to make profits. For example, मेरे यहाँ पर प्याज अगर 20 रुपए किलो मिल रहा है, मैं यहाँ पर 20 रुपए किलो खरीद कर, for example, say in मुंबई, in महाराष्ट्र मुंबई में मैं उसको 80 रुपए किलो में बेच देता हूँ. Right? There is no impact of the exchange rate. कोई एक्सचेंज रेट नहीं लगा. इन्फ्लेशन का डिफरेंस था, मैंने डिफरेंस इन इन्फ्लेशन की वजह से पैसा कमा लिया 300%. ठीक. सो दैट इज समथिंग, दैट इज व्हाट आर्बिट्राज टॉक्स अबाउट. बट दैट इज नॉट हैपनिंग. वेरी रेयरली इट हैपन्स और बहुत लूप होल्स होते हैं जिसमें ये हो जाता है, बट अदरवाइज दिस डज नॉट हैपन. सो व्हाट हैपन्स इज दैट देयर इज एन इन्फ्लेशन डिफरेंशियल, which is a factor that many economists including IMF use to make sure that there is a smooth transition, particularly at the space where currencies are being exchanged. और इस inflation differential को use करके currencies and उसके exchange rates को डिफाइन किया जाता है। नाउ एक बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग सा फैक्ट सामने आता है एंड दैट इज अ फिफ्थ, सॉरी जस्ट अ सेकेंड, कोलावेरी डी तक बाद में पहुंचेंगे, पहले थोड़ा सा इसको समझ लेते हैं। A very interesting fact about India and various other countries. Now what we have seen is that like any other developing nation, India has been having higher than the advanced economies. Inflation differential India का हमेशा India की तरफ झुका रहा है. We have always had a higher inflation rate compared to other advanced economies. All right? Sorry. Right? Now, this is seen through this graph as well. Just a second. I don't like, random lines on my page. I want you to focus on good things. जो मैं बोल रहा हूँ, जो मैं दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ आपको, जो कॉन्सेप्ट समझाने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ, उसको जड़ से पकड़िएगा, पेपर की नैया पार हो जाएगी। ध्यान रखना इस चीज़ को। Now, as far as the Indian rupee has been considered, it has been depreciating against major advanced economy currencies. ये अपने को नजर में आता है। This does not imply that inflation differential is the only factor for the depreciation. ऐसा नहीं है कि inflation differential इकलौता एक ऐसा factor है, but we have tried to isolate here in these graphs as well. 1970 से लेकर 2020-2021 तक की graphs की यहाँ पर annotations हैं, but what we are trying to understand is what is the impact of inflation differential on the currency exchange rates. ठीक है जी, तो ऐसा देखा गया है that this is one of the major factors behind depreciation of Indian rupee. Now once we have understood this, we need to understand what happened in 2021, because in 2021, particularly in the second half of 2021, post-COVID, Indian economy was reviving, unlike other advanced economies. और इंडिया के अंदर inflation differential जो था as compared to other developed countries, it reversed. Now other developed countries, the advanced economies, they were having higher inflation rates. Now India was at a very bright and a very sweet spot during this period, and that is why, if you remember, somewhere around September 2021 and in the beginning of 2022, you remember the growth projections. If you have been reading newspapers, नहीं पढ़ रहे हो तो पढ़ना शुरू कर दो. If you had been reading newspapers, you would realize the IMF, the World Bank, the major, the institutions, the multilateral financial institutions or other institutions of the world which basically measure economic growth and progress, they said that India was in a very bright and a sweet spot. Karan, inflation was controlled. Number two, it was doing much better than other advanced economies as well, like the EU, the European Union and the UK, for example. Lekin, and including the United States, because this reversal happened, we see that there was a reversal in the trends as well. क्योंकि inflation differential reverse हो गए, तो ऐसा देखा गया that rupee basically appreciated against pound. For example, it was somewhere around 100 rupees in September. 1 pound was somewhere around 100 rupees in September 2021. It was brought down to 95 rupees per pound in July 2022. The reversal in the inflation differential led to the reversal in the trends of exchange rate regimes. A wonderful thing. It seems like a very good thing, but it did not happen in the case of United States. Dollar के केस में ये नहीं हुआ. So what happened? And that brings us to the question that I had put up, जो कि था, why this cola very deep? Why did this happen? Now there is a very random US economist that had said something, and I found it very funny. Larry Summers, this guy said that US dollar depreciates only against Mars. सिर्फ मंगल ग्रह के खिलाफ depreciate करेगा और किसी के खिलाफ depreciate नहीं करेगा. And his point was that in case of global economic crisis, चाहे आप 2008 के crisis की बात कीजिए, Asian financial crisis की बात कीजिए, any of the crisis in the history of humankind, we see dollar always appreciating for one reason, one basic reason, it is a hard currency. जिनको नहीं मालूम है हार्ड करेंसी क्या है, फर्स्ट थिंग्स फर्स्ट, कमेंट इन दी कमेंट सेक्शन. अगर मालूम है तो कमेंट सेक्शन में बताना. दूसरी चीज नहीं मालूम है तो सर्च करके कमेंट करना. I want to see your comments. I want to see if you guys are working hard, as hard as the currency, the hard currency, the hardest known currency, and that is the United States dollar, जिसकी hardness को basically हम target करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं with the the initiatives that we are running with, say, Russia, with, for example, China, with various other countries as well. European Union ने यूरो निकाला for this reason itself, है ना. 2008 का क्राइसिस आया, उससे पहले के क्राइसिस आए, बाद के क्राइसिस आए, कोविड आया. इट डिड नॉट इम्पैक्ट इन एनी फॉर्म व्हाटसोएवर द यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स डॉलर. रीजन, whatever happens, even when the Federal Reserve, हम जनरली सोचते हैं, सुनते हैं, अगर आप न्यूज सुन रहे हैं, फेडरल रिजर्व ने इंटरेस्ट रेट्स बढ़ा दिए. नाउ बिकॉज इंटरेस्ट रेट्स हैव रिजन, you think that you would park your dollars in the United States in the form of FDs or government bonds or government securities. You think that would be the right thought, right? That happens as well. The entire pool of US dollars sways away from the developing nations. सारे देशों में से निकलकर ऐसे ट्रेन की तरह छुक 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 करके वापस से it enters into the United States. The dollars, they flow back into the United States. It happens. ये बात सच है. But it was seen that even if the Federal Reserve keeps the interest rates near to zero level, जो FD के interest rate हैं सोचिए जीरो के पास हैं, फिर भी dollars keep shifting towards the United States, which creates a demand, an increased demand, a lack of supply of US dollars in the international market, and that leads to a major issue for various countries. Now, because this particular currency is a hard currency, when it becomes shortage in supply, its value increases. So no matter whatever is happening in the world, even then dollar would appreciate. That brings me to the statement that the Honorable Finance Minister had made. It is not that rupee is depreciating. She was right in saying that, because rupee was actually appreciating against major world currencies way back in 2022. थोड़े महीनों पहले की बात है. It is dollar appreciating, and she was right. Now we understand why and how. All right. So if you've understood this aspect, if you've got the idea as to what exchange rate regimes are, make sure to follow this session. Make sure to follow these sessions where I would talk about such important topics. कुछ important previous year questions भी लेकर आऊंगा, आपको ये भी बताऊंगा कि सवाल किस तरीके का बन सकता है. Even today you would see that there will be a statement based questions. There can be a question in the prelims which would be statement based, where you would see that probably UPSC would ask on these lines that how inflation impacts your exchange rates, and what is inflation differential or what is arbitrage. So these are basic concepts that you need to understand. Beyond that, आज अभी इस सेशन के अंदर इतना ही. I'll see you guys in the next session. In the upcoming sessions we would talk about more and more important topics and concepts which are relevant from previous 1.5 years. And in sessions को तहे दिल से follow करते रहिए. If you have not yet subscribed, make sure to subscribe this particular channel. And apart from that, Sri Ram's IAS की तरफ से जितने भी initiatives हैं उनको follow करते रहिएगा. Your preparation, our support, let's crack it. Take care. God bless you all. Bye bye.